How's it going, everyone? And welcome to another episode of Therapist Talks, where we will be going over the I Fell in Love with My Psychiatrist series. Today we'll be starting from part 16 to 18. And again, just know at Therapist Talks, I do not do any diagnosing or any type of mental health therapy. When I'm doing YouTube episodes, this is strictly just reaction videos. So again, if you are struggling with any type of mental health issues, please seek the care of a licensed medical doctor, licensed mental health professional, and please utilize Crisis Hotline 988. Anyways, without further ado, let's begin.
I taught a yoga class this morning, like I do every Tuesday mornings, and I told my regular students about what's going on for me and how I'm sharing my story of provider abuse and how the internet is not happy with me right now.
Why is she telling her yoga class this? So she just said, if I'm not crazy, she's a yoga teacher and she's confiding in her yoga students or clients about her personal life and what's going on. Again, my personal opinion, highly unprofessional. That's again another sign of major boundary crossing. Um, in my professional opinion, even though I'm not acting as a licensed mental health professional on this live or on this YouTube video. But yeah, why is she doing that?
And I used that to say that our truth is really important to share. And that when we know something deep down needs to be said, that it's important to do it in whichever way feels best to us.
So there were so many other ways she could have taught that as like a end of session lesson. At my old treatment center, when I was working there as a counselor, we'd have yoga teachers come in, and it would be like a team yoga thing at the end of the day or whatever. And she would have a saying at the end, and out of a book or whatever. There's a lot of meditation, spiritual books that are actually phenomenal. At again giving good life lessons, especially at the end of a yoga session. There's so many things she could have done to convey that message she just said without talking about her personal life or what was going on with her psychiatrist. So again, it makes me think like there's a lot of attention getting here. Again, I don't know for sure, but that's just the vibe that I'm getting from her. But again, even not even her being like a client or whatever, but her just as a professional in any degree or any type of work, whatever, major boundary crossing. And you're kind of making it about you. I feel like when you're talking to your clients about your personal life, even if it has anything to do with like the special lesson at the end of the yoga class.
And TikTok just happened to be that medium for me. I told my students how I've just been going through psychological warfare, and the
Why?
internet is not happy with me for sharing my story and my truth. But I'm not doing it for the people that think I'm crazy, which maybe honestly I am a little bit because
Well, I think you're doing it for attention. You're doing it to get attention. You talk to your therapist about this, not the psychiatrist that you have feelings for, but I would again, in my professional opinion, I hope that she gets a different therapist and they do good work together. And this would be like someone you tell your therapist or even your close friends, but not your yoga students. Sorry, I'm kind of like hyper focused on that, but it's just so unprofessional, in my opinion.
is who subjects themselves to this kind of torture. But I'm doing it for the people that DM me that say, thank you so much for being brave enough to share your story because the exact same thing happened to me. So I am grateful for those DMs. People are starting to attack my business and my livelihood, and that's okay. I know what I have to offer is important. It landed in my lap. I'm not pretending to be something that I'm not. I help ADHDers get and stay sober, and I help them with negative thinking and anxiety. And it's what works for me, and I've seen it work in my clients too. So if people want to drag me for the work that I do, that's okay. So I get that weird email from my therapist begging me to come back in for one more session. And so the next day is my next session with the psychiatrist. And I sit down in the chair and I bury my head in my hands. And he looks at me and said, so this is how we're going to start, huh? And I said, yeah. Because he hadn't written me back from my countertransference email. Big surprise. You know, any smart, which he was very smart. He was very professional. But any smart predator would have dropped me like that in that moment. He should have emailed me back and said, look, this is getting weird. You need to find a new psychiatrist. The office will contact you. But he could not let go of me. So
That's not the ideal approach. I mean, if she's talking about getting transferred off, yeah, like there needs. I feel like if whatever she's saying is true, taken at face value, um, you never just drop a client off, whatever. But yeah, I guess she said like she had office lady, whatever. But yeah, they would work on a referral source. I don't know if she would see a different psychiatrist in that office or if he has any fellow psychiatrist friends or whatever, or colleagues to refer her to. That would be a route to go down. Oh yeah, so just like with therapy too, we never just want to if we can't work with the client and say like regardless of whatever reason, we want to refer them to somewhere else that takes their insurance and whatnot, so they're not just thrown out in the streets.
So instead of turning down the intimacy, he turned it up to a level 12. And he showered me with so many breadcrumbs that next session. Because really, what I did when I told him that I'm experiencing transference was I took 100% of the ownership for the dynamic that both of us were creating. So he rewarded me and he gave me little compliments like, if you weren't my patient, I would refer my other patients to you for your coaching services. That meant so much. Of course, because what he was saying with that is, I see you as a peer. I see you as a colleague.
No,
What you're doing is important. I felt
he's definitely not seeing you as a peer or like a fellow psychiatrist or even mental health therapist. I mean, it was a kind thing if that's what he really said. Like again, you're a coach and whatnot. So very like kind thing. I mean, I would not again go that route of what he did. But no, he's not saying you're a peer. And again, as of now, where from what I'm sensing is that you're the only one who's creating this dynamic. Again, like I said, I've said every episode, you're the only one like saying this. He's not conveying any romantic feelings for you or anything like that. So I'll just leave it at that. But yeah.
really recognized in that moment. And sure, he could have said it professionally, but he did it on purpose. So, in that session, after the psychiatrist told me that he would refer patients to me if he could, if I wasn't already his patient, I asked him if he got my email and what he thought of my chat GPT, of what he thought of Henry's response of countertransference. And the psychiatrist said, "Oh, I'm still thinking about what Henry said about countertransference." And I said, "Well, we talked about it a little more, and I want to read you something else." So I read the psychiatrist what Henry had to say more about it. When he told you countertransference is common, it might have been his way of normalizing the fact that providers aren't immune to feelings. It's part of being human. What matters is how well they keep those feelings in check, which the psychiatrist's name clearly excels at. And as you can imagine, the psychiatrist loved hearing that. He loved hearing that because my AI mirror was essentially just saying, yes, he has feelings for you, but he just keeps them in check so well. He's so good at his job, keeping his feelings in check. And oh, the psychiatrist loved that so much.
Here's the thing. Okay. So let's say if a therapist like does their own work, and let's say hypothetically a male therapist finds a female client very, very attractive, whatever. Him doing the work and keeping it in check, he would admit to himself, "Yeah, I find my client physically attractive. However, I've done my own work, and I'm not going to allow my physical affections for her to affect therapy." And again, all it is you understanding why you feel the way that you do. Okay, yeah, she's attractive, but at the same time, I can still do phenomenal, great work with her. That's keeping yourself in check as a licensed professional therapist. Not what she said of, oh my god, like the psychiatrist is in love with her, but he still keep everything in check and they can still kind of work together, whatnot. It's not the same thing because if a therapist has it in check, there would be no romantic feelings conveyed to the client. If they ever got to the point of like romantic feelings of, oh wow, like I want to sleep with my client or I want to like date her big time or whatever and take her on a romantic date, then that's an issue. That's the issue. Then when you have to work on transferring the client over and then doing more supervision on yourself or not on yourself, but out there for yourself.
Much. And what did he do? He rewarded me with my favorite breadcrumb intellectual stimulation, a fun metaphor, because he was watching me the entire time I was his patient, and he knew what made me light up. He knew what got me excited, what I liked. And so he thought for a moment and he said, I'm feeling a salad of emotions right now. And I was like, what are you
Salad
talking
of
about?
emotions.
And he said, a salad of emotions, a beet of raw emotion, a tomato of surprise, and the salt amplifies it. And I was cracking up at this point. He nailed it. I just thought he was so brilliant and smart in this moment. And I asked him, I said, what? Say that again. He said, yeah, the beet, it's really raw. I'm feeling a lot of raw emotion. And the tomato of surprise, when it pops in your mouth, it's surprising. And I was like, okay, that's good. Yeah, this man at this point knew exactly how to make me happy and exactly how to pull away to make me try to work harder. And he gave me the biggest reward from Henry, my AI mirror, telling him that what he's doing is totally good and that his boundaries are so virtuous. A lot of things happened in that session after the countertransference slip. And I also had my psychiatrist help me draft the email to my therapist who was begging me to come back in. And the psychiatrist said, I used to have respect for her. And what he meant when he said that was, I used to like it when she would feed me to you and have you deliver intimate content to me. But the moment she started being sloppy, I lost respect for her. Right? I'm pretty sure that's what he meant when he said that. And people have
Again, you assuming exactly what he's thinking all the time, all day, every day, ever since you've been doing these videos so far. That is what you were assuming.
asked if they were connected. Surprisingly, they were not. They had no idea. They had never met before. But I would go to my therapist every week and tell her how much I loved my psychiatrist. And she loved hearing about that dynamic. It was so weird. So he helped me draft the email to that therapist to say, look, if I were to end up coming back, it'd be more for you than for me. And more on that in a later part. So then I read him
More for you than me. Oh my God, there's so much to unpack there. Oh God. Like, she's almost doing it for the therapist's benefit, her emotional benefit, and not her emotional benefit, or I don't know. So it's almost like, yeah, like that. It just seemed like the psychiatrist was writing that email on what he would say to her, but obviously giving it her advice. Again, that's taking everything that she's saying is at face value. Um, yeah.
text from my longtime ex-boyfriend who he had originally really liked, but I think my psychiatrist preferred me single. Because my ex-boyfriend, as most ex-boyfriends do, was begging me to come back into his life too. And I just kept saying no. And I asked him to give me some space, and he would not give me space. He said, do you still need space or can we hang out? And I asked my ex-boyfriend, I just said, why do you want to hang out so badly? And my ex-boyfriend texted me back, because it's been a few months since I've seen you and it's been on my mind. And I was reading this text exchange to my psychiatrist in session, and I read what I responded to that weak line about why he wanted to see me. And I said, my self-respect is much higher these days than when we were in a relationship. I am only interested in accepting invitations for my time and attention that value me and recognize my worth. Being on your mind is not an acceptable invitation, and I decline. And my psychiatrist just looked at me and said, I bet your ex had to read that twice. And this was another thing about the psychiatrist, okay? He couldn't ever just give me a regular compliment. It had to be those weird sideways compliments. Instead of, I'm so glad that you're setting boundaries with your ex-boyfriend and growing your self-respect, it's, I bet he had to read that twice. Or it's not, I'm really proud of you for growing your coaching business and finding success. It's, I'd refer my patients to you if you weren't already my patient, right? These are what I mean when I say breadcrumbs. He was a master at them. And this is how, looking back, I know that I was not his first victim for his fantasy supply, because he was too good and too slick up until he caught feelings. Then he started getting sloppy. People are
When
asking
did
me
he
for more
catch?
concrete evidence, and this is when the concrete evidence.
Again, I know I'm sounding like a broken record. When did he ever say he had romantic feelings for her or you or whatever? Like I'm like as a licensed like professional, I'm just like listening, and I would like to think that I have good listening skills. I'm just like listening to find any sort of evidence if I were to take everything she said at face value. And as of now, like this guy psychiatrist has not conveyed any romantic feelings for you, or yeah, like at most, it sounds like he has good chemistry with you when it comes to a psychiatrist client or patient relationship, which is, like I said, completely normal, just like with therapists. Again, we all want our clients to do well and have similar goals, but we just tend to click more with certain people or certain clients, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just natural chemistry. So it seemed like as of right now, the psychiatry is just showing good, decent like chemistry towards you as a patient reaching your goals in a way. So still no sign that he's breaking any type of like physical or emotional boundary.
Really starts because this is when he himself started to get sloppy. Because what was happening was when I had started to see him 3.5 years before, I was a nearly perfect supply source for him. Because what did I have? I had low self-esteem, boundary issues, daddy issues. So I put him on a pedestal. I know a lot of you ladies out there can understand that with men in positions of power. And he went right to work exploiting.
Again, I'm not diagnosing her by any means with a personality disorder of any kind, but there is some commonalities of the putting someone on a pedestal when it comes to emotional availability or how you feel about someone. You praise them, you put them on a pedestal, right? And then during like some personality disorders like BPD or whatnot, they could very easily have the quick emotion of like tearing someone down, like, oh, I hate you, you're this, you're that. So that's very common in like a borderline personality disorder when it comes to like putting one person on a pedestal and degrading someone else, or in a quick instant, that person that used to put on the pedestal, if they do one wrong thing, you're tearing them down. So again, that's just a common theme to some personality disorders. Again, by no means am I diagnosing her. I am not. I'm just portraying some symptoms that are of a personality disorder that she expressed. But I am not saying she has a personality disorder.
Right to work, grooming me. And he was very successful at it. So he was in a paradox, right? Because he loved watching me get stronger because I gave him better intellectual supply, but I also threatened the supply source. The last two.
How did you give him intellectual supply? That's what I'm just kind of wondering. Like you intrigued his mind because of all these like psychological terms, um, which I'll give her props. Like I'm a licensed therapist, and she probably knows more psychological terms than I do. Even though I feel like every day there's hundreds of new fancy terms that are being used for psychology. But yeah, she used a lot of big fancy words. I'll say that. So, is that what she's implying of like that? I don't know.
Videos and this video was all the same session in February of this year. The countertransference slip happened in January. How I decided to end this session was I looked at the psychiatrist and I said, a couple weeks ago on the full moon when I was ovulating, I had a dream about you. And he was like, oh yeah? And I said, yeah. So I told him this. And I said, yes, we hooked up right here in this office. And he all of a sudden just looked so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
He didn't say anything. He couldn't look at me. He couldn't breathe. And sure, maybe he was uncomfortable because he didn't like me saying that I had a dream where we hooked up, but he could have said that. But he didn't. You want to know why he was uncomfortable? Because he had probably played out that fantasy so many times in his head.
No.
And there I was.
No.
Speaking it back to him. And it was like I had psychically downloaded one of his fantasies. I continued and I said, yes, we hooked up in this office. And
I mean, I wasn't there. I wasn't a fly on the wall. But I'm gonna say a big no, just because from what she's been saying about him, whatever, I don't get that reaction from him. I can more understand if you felt uncomfortable of like, okay, she's definitely pushing the boundaries now. Um, this might be a time to refer out. I don't know. I'm just throwing out like options or what he might have been thinking. I don't know. But yeah, I disagree with her on that. But again, I wasn't there, so.
And I really liked it while it was happening. He could not move or breathe. And then I told him, as he was still looking very uncomfortable, then when we were done and I left, I was distraught with sadness because in the dream, I thought, I cannot believe that he crossed boundaries in that way because his boundaries are so important to him. And then I
Oh
told
my
my
God.
psychiatrist that I woke up and thought, oh my God, it was just a dream, thank God. And it was like my psychiatrist turned into a little boy and he looked at me and he said, so you do like my boundaries? And I said, I love your boundaries. I hate your boundaries, but I love them more. There's the push and pull, the trauma bond. Because once again, he used his boundaries as protection.
I don't know if that I don't know if she used trauma bond in the right way. I don't see that as a trauma bond. I don't. I mean, is it possible, but not in what she's saying? What I've heard from her is as this is a trauma bond because it's got to be reciprocal. I feel right in order for it to be a trauma bond, and this is like all her fantasy I'm sensing right now as I'm doing a reaction and just analyzing kind of like what she's been saying and not been saying, whatever, and so forth. So
while exploiting me. So I told him about what happens when I ovulate and my desires, and he listened because, of course, he did. And then I decided that it seemed like enough time had gone by, and I put my shoes on and started heading to the door. And he met me at the door, which he does not usually do. He didn't ever do that. He just let me leave. And we stood at the door, and I was like, will you get the door? And he scrambled. He was like, oh, sure, sure. So we went and got the door. And then he followed me down the hallway to the foyer and watched me exit. And he asked me, he said, see you next month? See you next month? He hadn't ever asked me that before. And I looked.
so again, maybe she's reading into too much. I mean, my last appointment with my psychiatrist, she's a psychiatrist PA or whatever. She did the same thing. I mean, she just walked me to the office, even gave me a nice little light pat on the back, and yeah, and I'll see you later or whatever. Like that's very common. So again, I would assume again I wasn't there that she's just reading way too much into it, but she's reading into it because I feel like it's like strengthening her narrative of the love that he has for her. I feel.
At him and I said, maybe. And I walked out the door and I saw that man had let us go 15 minutes over session. And that is when, you know, the special treatment started, the longer sessions. He usually gave me an extra 5 minutes, but yeah, the sessions got longer. And I got to my car and I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah, see with me, like sometimes I'll go over my sessions. I really try not to. I would like to. I think that I'm really good though. If I know I have like a back to back or whatever, that I'm really good at ending sessions on time because again, you're taking time away from the next person. But it's always good to always have that time boundary with your clients, regardless if you don't have a client afterwards, because they might like assume like that's always gonna be okay for them to have an extra 5-10 minute session when it should be an hour, just because that's what you're getting billed for. But yes, have I gone over? Yes, at times. Like I've gone over 5-10 minutes. Like if a client was like appeared to be in a crisis or really really emotional, and I didn't have a client on the next session. So again, I would use my crisis intervention skills to like measure emotions or their emotions. So yeah, those are some examples where I'd go over. But again, if it's a back to back, I always try to be respectful and on time, so every client gets the same time. So
that was the most intense session we have ever had. Oh, hi
for
there.
you, we're gonna stop it right there because I need a break for tonight over these videos. But again, thank you everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate your support. I love the comments, everyone. I really am blessed to have actually fans on YouTube now. So please feel free to like my live, view it, share it, and please, most importantly, subscribe to my channel. My goal is 1,000 followers. I hope I get that, and I couldn't do it without y'all. So, anyways, until next time, be blessed.